Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Matthew Terry? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put a link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the first crime, then move to the timeline of the second crime before offering my analysis. Matthew Robertson Terry was born on January 8, 1975, and lived in Lansing, Michigan. This is about an hour and a half west of Detroit. In May of 2015, he met a woman named Michelle Rogers on a dating app. Michelle found Matthew to be likable. He had friends and was active socially. The couple had fun together. Over time, Michelle noticed that Matthew was a completely different person when he was drinking alcohol. Once he started drinking, he had a lot of difficulty stopping. In addition to his drinking problem, Matthew appeared to be jealous, possessive, and paranoid. He asked Michelle a lot of questions consistent with a lack of trust. Michelle was ready to end the relationship, but discovered that she was pregnant. Matthew was not happy about this, but then he brought Michelle several baby products. This act of generosity influenced her, and she decided to stay with him. In May of 2016, Michelle and Matthew had a son. In December of that year, the family moved into the same residence. The relationship between the couple seemed to be going well, but this would dramatically change a few months later. Now moving to the timeline of the first crime. On Friday, March 17, 2017, Matthew and Michelle went out drinking to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. They started drinking sometime around 12:30 p.m. and went to a few different bars. At around 6 p.m., Michelle was ready to pick up her son from the residence of Matthew's parents, but Matthew was intoxicated to the point where he was incoherent. Michelle left without Matthew and picked up her son. After this, she went home and watched television. At around 8:30 p.m., Matthew showed up at their home and appeared to be angry. Matthew went into the kitchen and was preparing himself food as Michelle was sitting on the couch. Suddenly, Matthew physically attacked Michelle. He knocked her into a door, and they both fell to the ground. Matthew repeatedly punched Michelle and broke her nose. He retrieved a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her in the throat. Michelle managed to get to her feet and walked outside to the driveway. Matthew followed her and attacked her again. He stabbed her in the right shoulder and in her face. A neighbor heard Michelle screaming for help and called 911. Michelle could be heard in the background of the call, screaming for help. When the police arrived, they found Michelle across the street from her residence and realized that she had been stabbed 7 times. A broken steak knife was recovered in the snow not far from Michelle. Matthew had returned to his residence. The police found him wearing only his shirt and his underwear and arrested him without incident. Matthew was charged with assault with the intent to commit murder. He went to trial in October of 2017 and was found guilty of assault with the intent to do great bodily harm, less than murder. This was a surprising verdict, considering the nature of the attack. Matthew Terry was sentenced to only 3 to 10 years in prison. He adjusted well to prison life and was considered a model prisoner. Matthew had a longtime friend named Kay Baker, who became even closer to him during his incarceration. She would often assist him with various tasks. Kay lived in Lithia, Florida, about 45 minutes from Tampa. She taught math and science in an elementary school. At some point, Matthew and Kay became lovers, and Kay regularly traveled from Florida to Michigan to visit Matthew in prison. In December of 2020, after serving just 3 years, Matthew was released from prison and went to live with Kay in Florida. Now moving to the timeline of the second crime. On Friday, May 27, 2022, 47-year-old Matthew Terry and 43-year-old Kay Baker went out drinking with friends in order to celebrate Kay's last day of teaching for the year. At about 7 p.m., they arrived at a place called the Landing Bar and Grill. Not surprisingly, Matthew became intoxicated during the evening. At one point, when they were in the bar, Kay walked to the restroom. Shortly after this, Matthew did as well. As Kay was walking back, she encountered one of her friends and made a little dancing move by putting her hands in the air. A man who was walking by put his hands in the air as well, as if he was mimicking Kay's dance. The man did not know Kay or his friend. This was an innocent and spontaneous interaction. The man continued walking. Matthew saw these dancing moves as he was walking back from the restroom. He became angry and accused Kay of dancing with the man. Both Kay and her friend explained to Matthew that nothing happened, but Matthew just couldn't let it go. Kay and Matthew left the bar at 11:39 p.m. On the drive home, Matthew was still talking about it. Kay called her friend and asked her to explain to Matthew that nothing happened. At 11:56 p.m., Kay sent a text message to the friend, which read, quote, "LOL, sorry for that, so dumb, all good now," unquote. Unfortunately, the situation was definitely not all good. 32 minutes later, at 12:28 a.m., now on May 28, one of Kay's neighbors called 911 and reported that there was a woman outside with a major wound to her neck. The woman was struggling to breathe. The neighbor was referring to Kay Baker. When the police arrived, they found Kay between two houses, not far from her house. There was blood everywhere. Kay had nearly been decapitated and was pronounced dead at the scene. A trail of blood led the police to Matthew, who was hiding in the woods nearby. He was wearing only a shirt and his underwear and was arrested without incident. In Kay Baker's house, the police noticed that one knife was missing from the butcher block in the kitchen, but no murder weapon was recovered. The master bedroom door had been forced open. A screen was pushed out of the window in the master bedroom as if someone had climbed outside. There was no blood in the house. It appeared as though Matthew had killed Kay outside where her body was found. In November 2022, Matthew went on trial for murder. His defense argued that a mysterious intruder must have entered Kay Baker's residence and attacked both Kay and Matthew. After the attack, Matthew rendered aid to Kay, which explains why her blood was on him. He then chased the phantom killer through the woods. Typically, in murder cases, defendants waive their right to a speedy trial, but Matthew did not. He wanted everything to move quickly. In the end, he obtained his wish. The jury only needed 1 hour and 10 minutes to find him guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Matthew Terry was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Undoubtedly, he will use this time to identify the phantom killer who escaped his grasp. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Matthew Terry appeared to be arrogant, self-centered, jealous, possessive, controlling, and paranoid. His excessive use of alcohol only magnified his destructive behavior. There is no question that he was guilty of the crimes in both 2017 and 2022. In the 2017 incident, I believe that Matthew was trying to kill Michelle Rogers. He stabbed her 7 times in the throat, shoulder, and face, and broke the blade of the knife. She testified that he said, quote, "I'm going to kill you," unquote. In the 2022 incident, when Matthew murdered Kay Baker, the defense narrative about the mysterious intruder did not make any sense. The only thing going for Matthew was how the murder weapon was never recovered, but that's not enough to create reasonable doubt in this case. Item number 2, Matthew received a sentence for his attack on Michelle, which was inconsistent with the violence he displayed. Furthermore, after being released from prison, he went right back to drinking alcohol. Even if somebody were to defend his early release from prison, he definitely should not have been drinking. Furthermore, no one who was aware of his history should have been drinking with him. This is like hanging out with a ticking time bomb. It's clear from Matthew's behavior that he did not need any legitimate reason to become violent. He had a hair trigger. Matthew attacked Kay because he believed she had danced with another man. Kay did not do anything wrong, yet Matthew became upset and would not stop obsessing about his suspicion. Even after Kay thought the situation was resolved, Matthew continued to get angrier. A violent individual who is this capricious is never safe to be around. Item number 3, Matthew's 2 crimes had many similarities. For example, both involved Matthew attacking a romantic partner with a knife while he was intoxicated. Both crimes started in a residence and ended up outside. The attacks occurred on Friday night. The victims of the attacks had been drinking. After both attacks, Matthew was arrested without incident while wearing a shirt and underwear and covered in his victim's blood. And Matthew tried to escape the consequences of both crimes. Item number 4. The primary mystery in this case revolves around the romantic relationship between Matthew and Kay. There is no doubt that Kay knew about Matthew's attack on Michelle Rogers. Kay testified as a character witness at the trial, helped Matthew during his incarceration, and traveled to Michigan to visit Matthew in prison. When Michelle Rogers found out that Kay was getting close to Matthew, she contacted Kay and made it clear that Matthew was manipulative and dangerous. Why did Kay take such a tremendous risk by being with Matthew? This is just a theory, my opinion. Matthew Terry was charismatic and likable when he was not intoxicated. He may have told Kay that the attack on Michelle was not as bad as it seemed. Perhaps Matthew suggested the attack was justified, like he was provoked. After all, both he and Michelle had been drinking. Matthew effectively manipulated Kay into believing he was a good guy who would never be violent again. He may have attacked Michelle with a knife, but he would never do that to Kay. Like Matthew, Kay enjoyed drinking alcohol. She almost certainly noticed the same thing that Michelle noticed. Matthew was a completely different person when he was intoxicated. Kay may have considered suggesting to Matthew that they both stop drinking, but she did not want to give up alcohol either. She convinced herself that Matthew could drink responsibly. This is a dynamic that can occur in a romantic relationship where both people drink. There is a tremendous pressure on one partner to avoid criticizing the other partner's drinking. Neither partner wants to push the relationship into a non-alcohol consumption status. Furthermore, research indicates that couples who engage in concordant drinking, that is, they possess similar drinking habits, tend to be happier. Discordant drinkers have lower levels of relationship satisfaction. This would have placed even more pressure on Kay to keep drinking with Matthew. On the night of the murder, when they were at the bar, Kay was confused by Matthew's jealousy. Perhaps this was the first time he behaved this way with her, or at least to that extent. Kay was inclined to give Matthew the benefit of the doubt and attempted to rationally explain how she was not dancing with the other man. The man was simply walking the other way while mimicking her dancing behavior. There was no conversation or connection. Nothing happened between them. Kay did not realize it was impossible to reason with Matthew. Later, he allowed her to believe the situation was resolved, but then, in the house, he suddenly became violent. Kay ran to the master bedroom and closed the door. Matthew kicked the door in and realized that Kay had fled through a window. He retrieved a knife from the kitchen, chased Kay down, and nearly decapitated her. Matthew ran into the woods and somehow hid the knife well enough so that it was never found. Now moving to my final thoughts. Finding a suitable romantic partner can be challenging. It is tempting for people to ignore traits that would normally be considered deal breakers, like if a potential mate had attempted to murder a previous lover with a knife. Furthermore, some violent offenders are highly manipulative. Matthew was probably very effective at convincing Kay that she was special, and he would never cause harm to her. Some people who perpetrate violence never do it again, so there is certainly a reason to be hopeful. But here is one major clue that indicated Matthew was different and should not have been trusted. Matthew was aware that he attacked Michelle when he was intoxicated, yet just 18 months after being released from prison, he was at a bar consuming alcohol. He did not care about the consequences of his alcohol use. He knew that he was capable of serious violence when intoxicated, and he chose to drink anyway. Matthew betrayed a lover who believed in him for his one true love, alcohol. Those are my thoughts in the case of Matthew Terry. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.